everybody, welcome back to the Let's Talk Movie Podcast with me, John, and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And the reason why I'm dressed up in this just weird looking attire is because today we are going to be going to a mental institution. We're going to be talking about 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the Best Picture winner, one of only 3 films to ever sweep the Oscars. So one of the best picture winners of all time. And me and David happen to be big fans of this movie, right, David?
Who? Me? Yes, very big fan. And listen, sweeping the Oscars was bittersweet for me. So it was the same year as my beloved.
Yeah, it's tough, and that's a great year. Not only is Jaws that year, but also another one that I really love, and I already know you already love it. But Dog Day Afternoon was that year as well. So it's just it was a stacked year. But I think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest fits more into the stereotypical Best Picture winner than like Jaws would.
Yeah, and I think that kind of the whole kind of social meanings behind the movie definitely suited the Academy a lot more that year. But yes, no, big fan of Cuckoo's Nest, and it's really funny because it is because of Jaws, which is part of the reason why I originally watched it. Because I said before, like growing up and being a big fan of Jaws, and then starting to learn about the movie making process of Jaws, and then hearing about Jaws at the Oscars, and I was reading that it lost out to this film called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson, and it was kind of like, oh, what is this movie? It can't be that good. It can't be that good that it beat Jaws. And at that time, I don't even know how much of a Jack Nicholson fan I was. I think I didn't watch this movie. John told was like in my late teens, and I think I'd seen Batman, and I'd seen As Good as It Gets. I may have seen A Few Good Men, and Wolf. That was another one I'd seen. So I would say I was a massive Jack Nicholson fan, but I was certainly a fan of his Joker.
I'm no Picasso, but do you like it?
So I went out of my way and was like, well, I need to watch this movie. It can't be that good. I'm sure it'll be good, but it can't be that good. And I couldn't believe it when I watched it. I was blown away by it.
Yeah, actually, very similar experience to me, actually. I saw this in my late teens. I saw this in school. Very similar. Also, we're talking about another film that swept the Oscars. Same class that I saw The Silence of the Lambs in and A Few Good Men. I also saw this movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And, a lot of people don't care about movies, but I remember being in class, like, drawn to this and be like, this is incredible, this movie. Just phenomenal acting. And then you kind of look into, like, what this movie's based on. It's based on a novel that got adapted into a play, and getting this movie made is just as fascinating as the movie itself.
Yeah, and I have to say, one thing is that I wasn't too sore about Jaws losing the Best Picture Oscar after watching it. I actually was like, if it's going to lose to something, I'm glad it's this, because it is a phenomenal movie, and I think for years it was in my top 10 for years. And I haven't watched it. Funny enough, I haven't watched it in a long time because I've seen it so many times. I've watched it that first time when I watched it when I was 18 or 19, I've seen it so many times. I hadn't seen it in so long. And just put it on the other night, John, and just really enjoyed it again. And I'd actually forgot you saying about the making of aspect of it. There is a documentary, the version I have, it's a 2-disc special edition DVD. It must be like the 25th or 30th anniversary, something like that, or maybe 20th. And no, it couldn't be 20th because that'd be 95. It must have been like 25 maybe, or 30.
25 and 30. That'd be like 2000 or 2005.
Yeah, it was in the round then, and there was a making of on it, and I watched it. It's the first time I've watched it in years. And yeah, it was actually very interesting about how they went about making this movie. That it was so low budget, and they wanted to film it on location, and they wanted to make it as realistic as possible. It got me thinking about what me and you have been talking about in recent the movies we've done about Freakin' and The Exorcist and French Connection, about how the 70s kind of started off with this idea that movies had to be more real, and the director Milos Forman kept telling them, the cast and the producers, that we want this to be real.
Yeah, and I think that's a big aspect of the film that they nailed. And it's funny because Milos Forman himself was the way this movie even got made was like Kirk Douglas was attached. He got the rights to it. And his son, Michael Douglas, pretty famous actor himself, he asked his dad to produce the film and actually get it made. But Kirk Douglas was still going to be attached to play McMurphy. And they wanted Milos Forman to direct the movie, but he was actually stuck in his country. It wasn't until he came back to the United, he was able to flee and come to the United States that he was able to direct this movie. Finally, it all came full circle. But Kirk Douglas got too old, and they had to recast. And Michael Douglas said it strained their relationship that he had to recast his father, which I can imagine. That'd be a tough situation. Like, hey, listen, Dad, got a little too old, so we're gonna have to find someone a little bit younger. And what I found interesting is that 4 people had to decline the role just to get Jack Nicholson, which is unbelievable because this is the first of his 3 Academy Awards. And it still bugs me a little bit that in 74, he didn't win for Chinatown. And I get it, I guess, but Al Pacino also didn't win for The Godfather Part 2. So I don't know what they were thinking that year, but at least they made it up to him for this.
Yeah, and that's the problem with the Oscars. Is always feels like they're making things up, but for other things. But that's not to say that Nicholson truly did deserve his Oscar for this film. Me personally, I think this is his best role. This is his best performance. What you were saying about Kirk and Michael Douglas. So Kirk Douglas had bought the rights to this book before it was even published, Theory of the Galleys. And then he had it translated into a stage play, and he was playing him on stage. R.P. McMurphy on stage for many years, and it was him that actually asked Milos Forman to direct it in the early 60s. But what happened was, he sent him the book to read, and it got confiscated. And the book never made it to Milos Forman. And so what actually happened was that Kirk Douglas thought that he didn't get back to him. And he thought that Kirk Douglas didn't send him the book.
I can only imagine that being a big issue. But how is he supposed to know? And then it's funny how it came full circle back years later when Michael Douglas sent him the book, not realizing that it's the same exact book.
Yeah, but what happened was that 10 years went past, and Kirk Douglas was going to sell the rights of the book, and it was Michael Douglas that talked him out of it and said, "Look, let's try and make a movie out of this," and sent the book to Milos Forman, and this time he received it. And they basically said that no studio would touch it because of the content of the book, what it was about mental patients and torture and you could say repression, and they just thought it was just too disturbing to put in a movie. So that's why it then became a very small, very independent type of movie. And I think for the better, John, I think sometimes when you don't have money to throw at something, or you don't have a studio system interfering, that's when you get these type of groundbreaking and what would you say, social changing movies. And one thing actually I like about Nicholson at that time, because he'd been around for a while. He was in about 35 at the time, maybe a wee bit older, 37, 38. And he had some very, critical success, commercial success, but had been around for a long, long time. And I feel as if at this particular time, even in his career, even though I think up to that point he'd been the most nominated actor for a best actor Oscar, most nominated, who hadn't won yet, near certain. But he was still kind of playing his trade, and he was, I would say, taking risks, but he was basically doing these smaller type of movies.
I agree. He had a he had a little run in the 60s, but the 1970s is when he really started to blossom, when he could sink his teeth into a bunch of characters. I think in the early 70s, before this, he did 5 Easy Pieces, which is a movie I love. One that I never saw that you recommended to me, The Last Detail. He's phenomenal in that. And then the year before this, which is my favorite performance from him, which one of my favorite movies ever, is Chinatown. So he carries that over, and then he does Cuckoo's Nest, all that before 1975, and then obviously everything he does after. He's kind of riding this high and almost living off the legend of Jack Nicholson, which is kind of what gets him cast and why everyone wants him to be the Joker in Batman. But it all kind of starts here. The seeds are planted.
Yeah, and the thing is that, as Michael Douglas pointed out, people on retrospect look at Cuckoo's Nest and thinking, oh, it's just Jack being Jack. But the fact of the matter was that that's not the type of characters that Jack Nicholson was playing up to that point. As he says himself, he was playing more sensitive characters, and it was the last detail that made them sit up and go, oh, this is a performance that we could see Jack pull off because of the last detail. And I know that they sent the script to Marlon Brando. They wanted Marlon Brando, and he didn't even read it.
Well, he doesn't read even when he's cast, so why would he read it before?
That's very true. It'd probably be a very different movie, but no, this is perfect for Jack Nicholson. I think that even out of all the roles that Jack Nicholson has played, I think this will definitely be up there as one of the ones that people will remember him for.
Oh, 100%. I would say if you're going to think of Jack Nicholson, the top three that come to mind, this Batman, and then Chinatown, I think would probably be the big three. Oh no, The Shining. The Shining's also a huge one.
Jack Torrance is there as well. Yeah, but Chinatown definitely as well would be one of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, for me, I was introduced to Jack from Batman '89. Then it's coming back and seeing like what he became most famous for. And then once you get into like the 2000s, he's still doing stuff. I mean, he won his last Academy Award in '97 for As Good as It Gets. Like Jack always was like firing on all cylinders, but this is Jack like just getting to really show off. But it's not even just him in this movie. The supporting cast is phenomenal. Murderer's row of great actors.
Yeah, exactly. Look, to your point about Nicholson, obviously because I'm a bit older than you, like I was there for all I can remember the '90s kind of thing where watching the likes of few Good Men and Wolf and remember him winning. I remember like Mars Attacks and remember him winning the Oscar for As Good as It Gets and being happy for him because by that stage was like late '90s. I was kind of like aware of Jack Nicholson played the Joker, and I don't know if I'd seen Cuckoo's Nest by then. I probably hadn't have because I think it was about 18 or 19, so I might have seen Cuckoo's Nest after he won that Oscar. So I was kind of happy for him to do it. So Jack Nicholson was a very big personality in the '90s, and you're right, that was probably built on more what he done after Cuckoo's Nest rather than what he done before. Playing the crazy guy in Cuckoo's Nest and then going on to do Jack Torrance in a Stanley Kubrick film, and then having movies in the 80s like The Witches of Eastwick and then Batman, so but I think he really reins it in when he gets to the likes of after. I mean, I think he directed a sequel to Chinatown, but then he reins it in when the Two Jakes, and then he really reins it in. It's a really restrained performance in A Few Good Men. I think he realized, I need to pull this in a wee bit.
He's phenomenal in that movie. Like it's one of the most iconic scenes in film history. But like his performance in the scenes he's in, like he did that in the '80s and '90s. Like he won for As Good as It Gets, which is directed by James Brooks. But in the '80s, he was in 2 James Brooks movies, and he just comes in for a few scenes in both of them and steals it. Like in Broadcast News and Terms of Endearment, one of his seconds. And I love both of those movies. It's funny because I love Terms of Endearment and why am I drawing a blank right off the top of my head? Terms of Endearment and Broadcast News more than I like As Good as It Gets. But I can't deny that Jack's great in As Good as It Gets. It's just that movie just never really worked for me.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like As Good as It Gets. So I do. I get what you're saying there about the movies he was doing then in the 80s because I remember he was in a movie with Michael Caine. I haven't seen it. I can't remember the name of it. Blood and Wine.
Blood and Wine sounds right. He did a lot of weird movies in the 80s, like The Postman Always Rings Twice. He did that one. He and then in the 90s too, he was doing that. He did that Danny DeVito directed movie. He plays Jimmy Hoffa.
Hoffa, yeah, Hoffa. That's right, yeah. But it was Michael Caine tells a story that he was in a movie with Nicholson in the 80s, and Nicholson advised him, because Caine was getting older, just like Nicholson says, you don't. He says never turn a role down, no matter how big or how small. He advised him to kind of like go into supporting roles. And that's so smart because you can see that that's what Nicholson started doing himself in the 80s, which is to your point of playing these smaller supporting roles in the likes of Terms of Endearment and Reds and movies like that. Even just for his friends, maybe as a favour. Nicholson, that we know when he made Cuckoo's Nest, and you're right, this Oscar probably propelled him to a higher level of stardom.
I completely agree. Definitely got him to that next level. And just to touch on like the supporting cast, because I was looking it up beforehand. Like a lot of these actors go on to
Yes.
become really big stars after this movie, and like none of them, some of them, this is their first performances in film, and then a lot of them also like tragically passed away at young ages, and I didn't realize like one of them, the doctor, the one guy who plays, I think it's let me get the name right because I just found this out today. The guy William Redfield who plays Harding in this movie, he died while they were making the movie of
Mhm.
cancer, and that guy was buried. He's buried on in Long Island, in Farmingdale, Long Island, and he's buried in a cemetery that I used to work right across the street from, and I never even realized it.
All right, there you go. Very good. Look, you know what? I knew that some of these guys have passed away, like Sydney. What's his name? Who plays Cheswick? Yeah, I know that he's dead. I suppose a lot of them are dead now, like because the movie's 50 years old. But because obviously
Yeah,
Louise
I mean,
Fletcher died a few years ago.
yeah, a lot of them just died from old age.
Yeah,
Another one,
yeah, exactly.
but like the chief, like his actor, he passed away at 53. Like that's like that sucks.
Yeah, to your point, some of these guys died, not long after the movie. I'm trying to remember, where did I see Chaswick? I seen him in a movie. What was the movie I seen him in? I can't even remember the name of the movie now. I seen him in. I was like, "Where's the guy that won for the Cuckoo's Nest?" And he's like, because he's an actor, he's obviously, I've only ever seen him in Cuckoo's Nest, and he's like nothing like that in this movie. It was hard, like imagining him playing this character because I've only ever seen him in Cuckoo's Nest. But when you think about some of the guys in this movie too, the ones that we are talking about that have passed on, they were middle-aged men, really, when you think about it, and some of these characters. But then you had the younger guys. You have like your Chris Lloyds in there, and you have like your Danny DeVito's as well. And then the guy, I can't remember his name. I always remember him in Ghost. He's there
That's
as
the guy
well.
I always think of it because he's got that droopy, like droopy dog face on him. It's so iconic. But yeah, he died too. Young.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of familiar faces in the movie, and I do love how I think they basically advertised for the cast in this movie. They put an advertisement in the newspaper and says something along the lines of, "We're looking for faces that can scare wolves" or something.
Well, they nailed that. They definitely nailed that. They got some of the, I mean, guys go on like what Christopher Lloyd plays after this, Danny DeVito. Like they play some weird characters after this. A lot of these guys. I mean, Brad Dourif becomes Chucky.
Yeah, then you have a really young Brad Dourif as well, who goes on to have an absolutely brilliant career in Hollywood as well. But I like how the director specifically kind of made that a point of making sure that the patients, the actors that he cast as the patients, that they all had distinguishable features that you could remember, that you can distinguish between each character.
Yeah, exactly. They're all very different. That's one thing. The Jack Nicholson might be the star, and Louise Fletcher might be the antagonist, Nurse Ratchet. But these other patients, like they play their parts well, and they open the movie on the patients before Jack even gets there, before he even gets to the hospital. So they made sure to introduce us to these characters early and show us the differences in their personalities.
Yeah, that's right. It opens up just showing a normal the everyday life in this institution, and then you have the great disruptor coming in to upset the apple cart, which is Jack Nicholson. He's just so charismatic when he first comes into the place, and he's kind of scoping the place out and just checking things out. It's a good introduction.
It is, and then that's when we first get introduced to McMurphy's character and RP McMurphy, and they go through the reasons why he's there. And this is kind of like where we start to like, as I've watched the movie over the years, my opinion on his character and Nurse Ratchet's character has changed a lot. And I've watched this movie a lot, like you, and I've watched this movie probably in the last like 5 or 6 years, like 3 times, so like every other year almost. And every time it's like, and this is why it's such a great movie, why it's so rewatchable, is we're trying to understand the mentality of these characters. And I also try to understand the mentality of these characters at the time. Like it takes place in the 1960s.
Hmm.
So, how they
Mhm.
perceive mental illness at the time is very different. And the fact this guy comes from a work camp, he's in there for statutory rape, and how they kind of like
Mhm.
pinpoint, like, I just think you're being lazy and you don't want to, you don't want to work. So he's not introduced to us as a great person, and that's always kind of challenged me about him. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, and I think that as well is that, well, first off, we see him come into the hospital, and as an audience member, you're assuming that this guy is crazy, and he's trying to act crazy.
Yeah. Put his hand over his
Yeah, by kissing the guard and howling, and he comes in, he's kind of like dancing a wee bit to the music and stuff, and you go, this guy's really crazy. And then you see the other crazy people, and they're just sitting calm, probably on medication time. So yeah. So then the next thing is that it's something I noticed when I was watching it the other night, John. As I say, I haven't watched this movie in about it must be 6 years, maybe 7 or 8 years. It's been that long. I can't believe it. And I do love it. I do love the movie. I just can't believe I haven't watched it so long. I could just watched it so many times. But the thing was that I laughed when the nurse was going through his bag, and it's like one pair of socks, a t-shirt. It's like one pair of socks. So he's got two pairs of socks. You know? No, he hasn't. He's not come prepared. But then the next thing is that when he goes up to see the doctor who runs the facility, who, by the way, was a real doctor in real life. This was filmed in a real hospital, and a lot of the hospitals because they wanted the realism to come through, they actually wanted to be filmed in a real hospital, and a lot of the hospitals wouldn't let them because of the subject matter of the book to do with the electrotherapy and lobotomies and all those type of methods that they were trying to use to cure people or find out what was wrong with them. But this one particular hospital, this doctor actually did run this hospital, and he had read the book, and he had thought that it would be interesting for Hollywood to come and film this movie here. And he had said that it would be good therapy for his own patients to see how a movie is made and to help out in making the movie. So he was open-minded to it because apparently he was a very progressive doctor, and he was trying to move away from these methods. His hospital didn't practice in these methods anymore, and he was looking for alternative methods to treat patients. And when he got the script, he had looked at some of the terminology that the doctors in the movie were how they were talking and what they were saying and how they were diagnosing patients. And he phoned up the producer and he said, "Listen," he says, "doctors wouldn't say that." And the producers just went, "Well, do you know what? You go through the script. You rewrite the dialogue the way you think doctors would diagnose things and the way they would say these things." And that's what he done. And eventually they asked him would he read for the part of the doctor in the script, and they decided to give him the part. And Jack Nicholson helped him a bit. Yeah, so he goes into the office to speak with the doctor, and you can see they're having a wee bit of back and forth, just trying to suss each other out. So Nicholson's asking him questions, and the doctor's kind of asking him a few wee questions. And I like how Nicholson kind of looks at the photograph of the fish, and he says to him, "Oh, that's a hell of a fish you got there, Doc." And he's like, "It must be about 40 pounds." And I think the doctor says, I don't know, 32 or 34, something like that. And Nicholson says, "Oh, 34. You didn't weigh the chain, did you, Doc?" And he starts laughing. So right away, you know, this guy's got a few moves. You know that, you know, he's well clued in, Nick. And then obviously so he goes into a wee bit more detail about why McMurphy's there. And he says, "Oh, they sent you down from the work firm because they said you're lazy." And he says to him, why do you think you're here?" And Nicholson says, "Oh, well, I think it's because I fight and fuck too much." And the doctor says, "In the penitentiary?" And he's like, no, not in the penitentiary. He says, I don't know. You know, so so the doctor's trying to suss out here, you know, is this guy lying? Is he pretending to be crazy to get here? And the next day was he says to him, "Well, do you know, they think you're crazy. Do you think you're crazy?" And the thing is that a person who's crazy, a person who's not crazy would say, "Yeah, of course I am." Right? Because they want them to believe that, yeah. But Nicholson's too smart for that. His character's too smart for that. So when he says, "Do you think you're crazy?" he says, "Not a goddamn thing, Doc." But he says, but I do want to get to the bottom of what's wrong with R.P. McMurphy, acting as if, you know, "Oh yeah, I'm here to work with you. I'm just for an easy life. I'm here to get to the bottom. So as long as I stay here, then everything will be fine, and we'll work this out and whatever." And I think at this stage, the doctor isn't really fully believe in him. I don't think the doctor knows what to make of him, but he's been sent there, and that's why he says, "Well, look, we'll run some tests, and we'll see what happens." But getting back to your point about R.P. McMurphy, he's not a very good guy. So we've now learned that why he's actually in the hospital. It's for statutory rape, and he tries to justify it. I personally believe that R.P. McMurphy is the type of anti-heroes that were starring in movies in the 70s. We had people like Gene Hackman in The French Connection. We had Vito Corleone. We had Michael Corleone. We had later on, the next year, we have Taxi Driver. So we have these really flawed characters, bad guys, anti-heroes who were kind of sticking it to the establishment. And here we also have R.P. McMurphy, who is basically rebelling against the system, against the institutions. So, you said earlier there, John, about you over the years, your kind of opinion has changed on R.P. McMurphy. I'll be honest with you, personally, my opinion hasn't. I fully think he's not a good guy. Not fully not a good guy. He's a shady guy. He's obviously, he gets into a lot of fights. He drinks. He's a womanizer, but he finds enough will and heart to realize what is happening to these people in this hospital isn't right. It's not normal, and I think that's what gives him kind of like the purpose to go on this journey and free them. Not physically free them from the hospital, mentally free them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what makes me struggle with him, is because he definitely has an arc. Like, his arc in this movie is like he's trying to pull one over on everybody and get out of there. And then by the end of the movie, we see that he could escape, and he chooses not to. Like, you could argue, oh well, he just passed out drunk, but no, I feel like in the back of his head, he's like, I've made progress as a human, and like I understand how these guys are feeling now, and I understand that like what's being done to them is wrong. It's 100% wrong, and me escaping and running away from it is running away from my own problems. Because I also think it's in the 1960s, and we've come a long way. He probably does have some actual mental illness in there that makes him do the things that he does anyway. Like, he is rebellious by nature. He's clearly like an angry person, doesn't know how to react well to, like, when he doesn't get his way. He reacts negatively always to authority. So, it's just, that's what makes the movie so challenging. It's like, on the other side, you get Nurse Ratched, played phenomenally in this movie. And both of them, like you brought up with the 70s anti-heroes, like, she's not 100% in my mind a villain. Like, she's also somebody who's like 30% good, while 70% is just the worst person walking the planet. Whereas McMurphy is somebody who's learning to become a better person, and this is kind of what's facing him now. But at the beginning of the movie, he's somebody who's not a great guy, but he's also not the worst person walking the planet. If that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yeah, it makes sense. I hope I made sense there as well. What I said before, but no, it makes sense. We had briefly talked about this like a couple of weeks ago, because when US1 was coming up, we briefly talked about Nurse Ratched and things like that. And I think in real life, right, nobody is 100% bad, right? Only in movies can you have an over the top kind of villain that is 100% bad. But even the worst villains aren't always 100% bad. Look at Darth Vader, because there was good in there, because he used to be good. You're saying about Nurse Ratched, it's just 30% good. You had said to me that you thought that she believed in what she was doing was good or right, and I disagreed with you. I had said that I don't believe that. And it's really funny that when the director was casting Nurse Ratched, that he went for other actresses. He didn't want to cast Louise Fletcher, but the other actresses turned him down because he wanted somebody, he said, really evil. And he looked at Louise Fletcher and thought that she didn't look evil enough. Well, he was going to cast Angela Lansbury, woman. I mean, she doesn't look evil, but he just didn't feel as if that she was evil enough. Maybe it was more her persona, or maybe you can see her acting that way. But he finally came around it and realized that this person shouldn't be fully evil, and that the person should believe what they're doing is the right thing. Okay, which that surprised me because you had said that to me, and I never looked at it like that. And she went into that with that idea, and the director went into with that idea. But his whole thought process was that it's more of a kind of underhand type of thing where she's so angelic and she pretends to be nice so she can kind of manipulate and kind of get her way. So I still go back to what I say, even if, I mean, people say that the worst villains in movies or the worst villains in life, the reason they're so bad is because they do believe what they're doing is the right thing. So they don't realize what they're doing is bad. But I do think there's a vindictiveness of this character, of this woman. It's to do with power over these men. Because I don't believe any of her methods of what she's doing is helping these people. She is undermining them. She's belittling them. She's making them feel, small. She's wearing them down. She's embarrassing them. You see their group therapy sessions, how she picks someone of them and keeps pressing them, pressing them, pressing, embarrassing them in front of everybody else. So I genuinely believe that she knows what she's doing. And I think that if her superiors knew her methods, I think she's being left to do what she wants. And I think if her superiors knew what she was doing, they would step in and stop it. I think that the doctor that I interviewed McMurphy at the start of the movie, if he knew exactly what was going on, that he would stop it. I think that he trusts her too much, and that's why she's allowed to get away with a lot of these things.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's something that I kind of reflected more on, and a line this movie kind of opened it up a little bit more for me. But the way I always initially thought, and the reason why I always felt like she wasn't, and you just brought it up, is like all the best villains think that they're doing the right thing. Thanos is like one of a more modern example, like somebody who truly believes that what they're doing is for the good overall. It's just that their view of the world we know is wrong. So we like he might believe that what they're doing is right, or Nurse Ratchet's case might believe like that's where it's struggling is because like in the 1960s was this how they dealt with mental illness? Like the belittling thing is now something that I look at, and I always was like, okay, I understand. Like when they pick on the guy how he felt about his wife and everything like that. Like okay, I'm like okay, maybe that's part of the regimen. It's I always felt like she went one step too far in the very end where you like that's the worst thing a person could ever do is when she belittles Billy Bibbit in front of everybody. Like that's like the most monstrous thing a person can do. But the other stuff, I'm like, okay, is she doing the right thing? Does she believe it? But at the end, then I'm like, okay, no, she's gone too far. And what unlocked the movie for me, and it foreshadows the end, is actually when Jack Nicholson's talking to the doctor, and like he's kind of a little bit more, I guess, like into this now, and he's kind of like a little bit defeated. He's like that fucking nurse, man, and he's like, what do you mean? He's like, she's playing with a stacked deck, if you know what I mean. Like she's cheating, and I'm like thinking like that's what you're saying, like. She is. She's always like it's in her favor, everything, because they believe she's working. She's one of the best there. But he's like, no, she's manipulating everybody so that she has that power. And you just don't see it. And she's going to keep doing it because she's unchecked. And I never thought about that line until I rewatched the movie.
Yeah. And the funny thing, too, as well, John, is that apparently the original cut of this was like 4.5 hours. And they got it down to like 2 hours and 13 minutes or whatever it was. And there's deleted scenes on the DVD I have, and I forgot about them, and I watched them. And the scene after where she's pressing Harding about his wife when he starts cracking up. I mean, like, how is that helping anybody, having that man have an outburst? I mean, you watch, she keeps asking and keeps asking, keeps asking. And when the other patients then start mocking him, she sits there and says nothing. She lets it go. But there's a scene after that where Nicholson actually says to Harding, I can't believe it. All you grown men sitting here letting her away with that. And he says to Harding, you really think that she's helping you? Which is exactly what Evans was saying in our conversation. They're not, she's not helping them. And Chad Nicholson's right away is like, you think she's helping you. And his response is, oh, she's one of the best psychiatric nurses in the country or something like that. So, and this ties back into the movie because you see when Nicholson says to Chief, Will Sampson says to him, I'm getting out of here, Chief. I can't take it anymore. And he talks about his alcoholic father. And he says about how life grinded him down. And he says to Nicholson, we're doing that to you in here, and you don't even realize it. And that's what they've done to every single one of them. And he says, they're working on you like they worked on him. And he says, and Nicholson says, what, they killed him? And he says, I'm not saying they killed him. So in other words, that he was just maybe dead inside, which, is kind of like what happens to him when he gets to the lobotomy.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of looked at that. It's weird now, but I looked at that also as like an allegory on society in general. Is like, we all kind of start out like, like his alcoholic father. Like, yeah, they didn't kill him, but they wore him down to nothing. And you could argue like society does that to a lot of people. Like they just grind at him until there's nothing left.
Yeah, exactly, John. And that's the thing too, as well, as you said about Billy Babbitt as well, is because she knows how to manipulate Billy, because we seen her earlier, in the movie about when he goes to ask the girl to marry him. And the thing is that she says about it, I can't remember the exact conversation, but she brings up his mother. She knows that is the thing that gets him, is his mother.
Down to a child, man.
Yeah, like all of that. When I watched it, that's one thing I did notice watching it again, John, was that to me, all the characters in this movie, apart from Nicholson, are very childlike. Every single one of them are very childlike in the way they talk and their mannerisms, and she's almost like just a very kind of domineering mother over the whole group. But the thing is that she knew that was the thing that would get him, and right at the end, that's when if you remember when she finds him in bed with the girl, and she pulls him out, and they're all cheering and rattling things and all. And the next thing was she says to him, "Are you not ashamed?" And he turns and he looks at the group, and he turns back and he says, "No." And that's when she says, "Well, wait till your mother finds out," and that's what gets him. He tries to kind of embarrass him in front of the group, and it didn't work.
No, it didn't. But like that's what's crazy about for Brad Dourif's performance in that is like he's confident in that moment. Like he finally feels confident in himself. He's not stuttering. He's speaking clearly. And then the second he brings up the mother and like how he's going to tell her mother, he breaks down, literally starts stuttering again, rats out McMurphy. Like he literally turns into like a 6-year-old child. And she knew that she could do that to him. That's why she's 100% responsible for his death, because she drove him to that point when she did not need to do that. He's an adult and voluntarily in there. Like, you didn't need to break him down and try and embarrass him in front of everybody. You wanted to do that to show your control, because he literally, he now was mentally stronger than he ever was. And you knocked him back down to square one, because why?
And that's what I was saying, John. It's all about control for her, and that's the thing. And that earlier conversation with Babbitt about the girl, you see, Nicholson's just fed up. He's just playing with his cards. But the thing is that she turns around and she says about, "Isn't that the first time you tried to kill yourself?" And that gets his attention. See him looking as if what's going through his mind of is that is something I think that Nicholson's character can comprehend, is suicide, killing yourself. For him, life is about having a good time. And when she says that at the end about his mother, and she goes in and he actually kills himself, that enrages Nicholson enough where he tries to kill her. But going back a bit about Nicholson's character, about having a good time, and that's his whole type of thing. It's all just kind of like, what are you doing in here? You should be out there having fun. I mean, you're not any more crazier than any other person out in the street, and that's what he's trying to tell them. So his whole idea is just about rebelling against this institution, that she has complete and utter control of all these men, to the point where he decides, let's do a vote to see if we can watch the World Series, right? And the first time the vote, they didn't get enough votes, right? And they don't get enough hands, because first of all, they don't get enough votes. First of all, is because I feel as if they're afraid to vote for it, because they're afraid about going against her regime. I mean, even when Billy later on, like that pandemonium that happens in the hospital, and Billy's lying there with his blood spilled all over the floor, bleeding out, dying. and the patients are freaking out. All she can say is, "We just have to get back to schedule." She doesn't like losing control of her regime, of her schedule, and that's why when they're all afraid to vote. I love how they're like, you see one of them going against his hand, and you see Harding kind of
Yeah,
going like
you're
at the he goes to put it up, then he just pretends he's rubbing his hair, and then DeVito's like this. He can't get enough votes, and they see how much that actually means to Nicholson that night. They see how much it really upset him that they wouldn't vote for this. I'll go back to that bathroom scene in a second. But the next day, when they do the vote again, it's actually Cheswick that says, this is a new day. Can we not have a vote? So you can see them starting to all turn on his side. I mean, when would Cheswick would have put it? I mean, he put it. Well, actually, I think he did put his hand up the first day. Did I? I can't remember, but I think he was going like that on the first day. But the next day, he's actually specifically not challenging authority, but he's asking a question, which is something which I don't think he would have done before. He's saying, we had a vote yesterday and it didn't go our way. This is a new day. Can we have a new vote?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's when he starts really acting out, Cheswick, and really starting to side with Jack.
But the thing is, John, when they do the vote the next day, like you say, a rigged game, right? She likes a rigged game. The DAC is like, we'll have a vote. They put their hands up. It's like 9. She's like, not enough votes. It was only 9. And Nicholson's like, oh, it's a landslide, only 9. And she's like, there's 18 patients on the ward. You need a majority. And I love that where he kind of goes around everybody. You want to watch the game? You want to watch the game? He goes up to one of them. And which one does he go up to? And he just goes, doesn't matter. Like,
I know. He's like, that guy's gone.
That guy's gone. I'm not going to get on here to him. But eventually he gets the chief to raise his hand and he goes below. But see, this is the part, John, what got me thinking, because you did say about, I think she's believing, she believes what she's doing is helping people, is because she does say, oh, tomorrow we'll have another vote tomorrow. The session's over, which makes me kind of think, what is she at? Why does she even suggest that? Does she care if they watch the ball game or not? And the thing is that she then turns around and she says, the session was over, you lost. It was 9-9. And you see Nicholson is doing is so kind of outraged. He gets the numbers wrong. He actually says there it was 10-9. Switch the television on when it should have been 10-8, right? You see him, the kids was 10-9. Which is great from the directors. The director did say that they improvised a lot and he just let the actors do what they wanted some of the time. And basically, when they were improvising, he would let the cameras roll and wouldn't tell them. Or if they were preparing, he would keep the cameras on them. And even when they were doing the group's therapy sessions, that they didn't know who the camera was going to be on. So they had to stay in character for the whole scene, just in case the camera was on them. So he gets that wrong, and you could tell this is the telling thing, because he catches on quickly. He sits down in the chair and he's raising, and she puts the music on, which he had already challenged her on. I must turn the music down. It's a patients don't have good hearing and they won't be able to hear it. She says it in a calm manner, and he's like raising. So he sits down in the chair and he's raising, and he catches on. He's like, I'll pretend the ball game's on. So the fact that he's pretending the ball game is on, he's still disrupting her regime. So he realizes, oh, right, we can't watch it because it's going to disrupt your regime. Well, I'll pretend to watch it and still disrupt your regime.
Yeah, but he's still going to throw her off, because now that's him just challenging her. And that's what he wants to do, is get one up on her, because she's winning. Like, that's the whole thing. And it really kind of opened up for me this time watching that. But I wanted to bring this one up because this is I think it's one of the best reveals in film history, because I didn't know this coming in at all. Like with the chief, and when the chief finally reveals like he's playing everyone and he can talk, just one of my biggest like cheer out loud moments the first time I saw that. I was like, oh, that's fucking awesome. And I was like as happy as Jack.
Yeah, juicy fruit. Yeah, it was. I mean, I can't remember what I actually thought, John, the first time I seen it, but I think there was a kind of, oh, he can talk type of thing. Yeah, he's got an ally there, and of course he does become his ally. I love how, like, as the movie progresses, he really does become Jack's main ally. He's going to leave with him. He basically helps Jack out when they get into the fight. That's how they end up getting the electroshock therapy, which was a real disturbing and shocking scene as well, because you see this Indian kind of like, you realize he can talk, and you see Jack going, Yeah, it's still tough to watch because you're kind of on a high with the characters. You're thinking because Jack's like, yeah, you know, what are we doing in here, Chief? You know, me and you's gonna get out of here. You know what I mean? And then you see that happen. First of all, you see like Chadwick being taken. You see him like grabbing on him, that letting go, and you see Nicholson kind of looking at him like, just let go. It's gonna be all right. So he doesn't understand what's gonna happen. And Chadwick knows what's going to happen. And then when you see what happens, you realize why he was so terrified. You see him being pulled out in the trolley unconscious. So you realize then that Nicholson or R.P. McMurphy, they're in a more dangerous situation than what he initially kind of anticipated when he went there.
Yeah, he did not know what he was about to get himself into. And that electric shock therapy scene on Jack is tough to watch. It really is. And Jack does a great job acting with that because they linger on like him having the shock therapy for a good amount of time to make you as uncomfortable as possible.
Yeah, they do. But I love the next scene when he comes back from that and he's pretending he's like been lobotomized, which is foreshadowing the end of the film. But
I mean, he pretty much set himself up there by acting like that. Because she saw him walk in like that and was like, okay, he didn't learn from that. So, all right, we'll get him next time.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I do love how he goes in and he's kind of like, you know, how he raises the spirits of the group right away. And then when she says, would you like to join the group or do you want to rest today? And he says, no, I'll join the group. Thank you, Mildred. He says her first name. And that kind of throws her off. And apparently Louise Fletcher says like weeks before that scene, Nicholson apparently said there, what's your character's first name? And apparently in the book or in the script, she's just called Nurse Ratchet, or you know, and she didn't have a first name, but she'd give her a first name, as actors do. They usually create backstories for their characters. And she had said to Nicholson, "It's Mildred," and he went, "That's good. That's good." So she wasn't expecting that. That wasn't in the script. He just threw it out there. And she actually said she did get embarrassed because she wasn't expecting it because he'd said it in front of everybody. So that also ties into what you're saying about as well, John, about him saying about how his character does grow and kind of evolve throughout the movie, and it does, because he starts off with, you know, trying to earn the respect of these guys, and by the end of it, they do all respect him. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what I was saying there about it. It goes back to what you were saying earlier on about how his character kind of evolves or as the picture goes on and learns, because when he first goes into the institution, he's kind of like he's trying to earn their respect, and then as the movie goes on, they do learn to respect him and even love him, and he earns to respect them too as people and love them, because if you notice when he's leaving, when he's about to go out the window at the end, and they say, you know, he's saying goodbye to everybody, he calls them all by their first name. He's no longer calling them hard on or there's a few other nicknames he was using for the patients. He's no longer doing that.
No, he's like a hero to them, and he genuinely cares about them. That's why he doesn't leave. I mean, he's planning to leave. He has that big party that night, gets everyone involved. I love that Scatman Crothers is in that scene too, which is, you know, one of Jack Nicholson's buddies, so he always gets him a job. But I mean, you got to be crazy to even think that this is gonna work. Like risk your job for this. Like, he gets caught immediately.
Yeah, like that's so funny, because obviously when they have that electroshock therapy, that is when, you know, Nicholson already said we're going to get out of here, and then that's when after that's when he's like, look, definitely gonna get out of here. But he's kind of like, there's plenty of occasions where he can kind of like escape, and he doesn't, and I don't know what it is. You're saying that he couldn't leave them. I don't know if maybe he's been a bit institutionalized, you know, or because it's like a safe place, or like you say, he does care about these guys, and he just wants to show them a good time before he goes. He wants them to remember him. He wants them to have a good time. He doesn't want them to be sitting there sedated and talking about their troubles all the time and worrying about life. And of course, yes, Mr. Turkle, they actually he catches him, so he has to kind of bribe him. You know, oh, there's alcohol, and maybe you can have one of the women here. And I love when the supervisor comes in, and they're all hiding in the office, and she's outside wondering where everybody is, and you hear somebody going, "Where's Turkle?" And somebody says, he's probably jerking off somewhere. And he's like, I'm not jerking off somewhere. I'm over here, motherfucker. And then you hear Nicholson saying, what the hell are you doing in here? What? Get out there and tell her everything's all right so she can go away. And then when he goes out, there's a loud noise and then catches him with the woman. So he gets so depressed that he starts drinking and passes out. But the thing about that ending as well, John, is that watching it again the other night, I just could never understand how everybody just fell asleep as if they were all kind of like drugged. Like, I know that they have to tell the story and you have to get to the point, that the climax of the movie. But like, is there nobody there? I mean, I didn't see it. I couldn't imagine the chief being playing drunk. I mean, McMurphy knows he has to leave. How the hell did he just fall asleep? Even if he had had a load of drink, I mean, it didn't look like he was really drunk. He looked like a hardened drinker. So that was the only thing about the film which I kind of go, how did everybody just pass out and not wake up at one stage and go, oh shit, we've got to get out of here?
Yeah, well, I don't know how many of them were actually going with them. So if it's just McMurphy and Chief and it's everyone following along, because like he couldn't get like Billy Bibbit to come with him or anything like that. So I don't know how many were actually going with him, but I kind of actually fall in line with you with something you said, is that I think he was getting cold feet about leaving anyway, and he might actually be a little institutionalized and be kind of worried about, like, now he's on the run, so now that's a, he's supposed to be locked up in there, even though he didn't know that like they are the ones that have to release him, so he can get stuck there forever. But I think he was a little bit worried about those consequences and it being a step too far, because the shot's weird. I was trying to watch it, so they linger on him. We don't see him fall asleep. We just see him still awake. Like, is he thinking or is he like now getting tired? I was trying to get in his head on this watch.
Yeah, is he thinking, do I really want to go?
Yeah, they leave it really open to interpretation on that, because then the next day, like now he's like all jumping up and trying to escape, but there's no chance with everyone staring at you. So you're just making a show of it because they're staring right at you.
Yeah, I know, and that was always kind of like a weird cut. And it's not that; it's like you think it's a bit strange. I'm wondering now that I know that the original cut was like 4 hours, half an hour. Was there something in between that? What happened? Because it's strange that he's on the sofa. Like, look, I've been in situations where I've had too much to drink and fell asleep on a sofa, but I fell asleep kind of like at the sofa. You know what I mean? But I've never woke up on the floor. So Nicholson kind of like falls, sits down, and ends up on the floor, lying sleeping. It's a bit odd. And what I'm saying is that no, I believe there was only him and the chief going with the two girls. The car was outside, and he tried to get Billy to go. Billy didn't want to go. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't, maybe especially with a lot of these patients have never had alcohol before. It's been a long time since they had alcohol. I can understand how they get so blind drunk. They're not leaving. They don't care if you get really drunk. You're going to fall asleep in your bed and not worry, right? You're not going to wake up and realize I got to go. But I just felt as if was there not somebody else, or like the chief or Nicholson, to wake up, or the other girl to say, look, we're supposed to be leaving here. They all just kind of like, it's okay. One person might be getting so blind drunk that they don't know what they're doing and don't want and fall asleep and wake up 10 hours later, right? But not all of them. So, but look, it's a story, and it's a storytelling device. And I do your point about not wanting to leave. Every time I watch this movie, even though I know what happens at the end, I want him to go out that window. I either want him to leave that night, or I want that the next day, when they hear the screams coming from the room, I still want him to go. I want him to climb out the window and go. Even when I was watching it the other night, when he decides that when Billy kind of gets a wee bit annoyed that he's leaving, and then he says, "Well, come with us," and Billy's like, "No," and he's like, "I'm not ready," and he was like, "Well, I'll send you a postcard. You can come up when you're ready." And he's asked about Candy, the girl, and even when he fixed her up with the girl, I was sitting thinking, leave with the chief and the other girl and sit in the car. Go and sit in the car outside of the institution, because at least you're out, right? That's what I was thinking. But the thing is that, yeah, you're right. He hears the screams and he just needs to find out what has happened. That's why he goes back. He needs to find out what has happened in that room. And of course, when he sees Billy Lander and he blames Ratchet for what she'd done, that's when he tries to kill her.
It's 100% her fault, so I don't blame him for that reaction at that moment, because that's a step you've gone way too far. And it's it's a fucked up thing, but like always in the next scene when they cut back to her and we see that like she must have had her neck broken or something, and she's standing there with the neck brace and talking to them like with the neck brace. It always makes me laugh, and I feel bad about it, but it always gets me just seeing her talking to them like all calm, like maybe she's trying to be a little bit sweeter because the last time a guy tried to fucking kill her.
Well, you see, that's what got me thinking about what you said about, is there a part of her that thinks she is doing good, right? Because if you notice earlier on in the movie, she takes their cigarettes off them because they're gambling, right?
Mhm.
With the cigarettes. The start of the movie, the patients, I don't want to call them the nuts, the nuts, that's what they call them, but the patients, they're playing cards, but they're not gambling. So they're allowed to play cards in the institution. But later on, McMurphy starts this card school, and they're gambling their cigarettes, and he's winning them all, right? So she makes a point of saying, I'm taking your cigarettes because Mr. McMurphy started a card school in the shower room, and you're losing all your cigarettes, so I'm rationing them out there so you don't lose them to him. But at the end of the movie, do you notice? They're all playing cards and they're gambling their cigarettes, and she's letting it happen. You see her saying, speaking as you say, speaking to them. So she has kind of changed because of what McMurphy has done, which is really odd. And you can then see that when somebody comes down and says, here, McMurphy beat up 2 guards and escaped, even though, at first as an audience member, you go, oh, wonder did he? But then when you realize what happens, you realize, no, this is just the myth of McMurphy reverberating around the hospital. This is the impact that this man's presence has had in this institution.
It's an incredible thing, and that's why the ending is actually so heartbreaking when they bring him in after he had finally changed. So he never had, like I said, having a stacked deck, he never had a shot. Like if he wasn't going to escape, they would have probably caught him. There was no happy ending for McMurphy. They lobotomized him and sent him back, and it's so heartbreaking when Chief sees it and figures it out, and he's like he's just basically limp, and then he's like putting an already dead dog out of his misery. There was nothing left, and he escapes, and at least like there's kind of hope that like he'll get away, and I think that we're led to believe like he would.
Yeah, well, the thing is that look, McMurphy thought he would go there for an easy time, and unfortunately, in a lot of ways, it was harder than just staying in prison. But
That's
I do believe,
life lesson for you.
yeah,
Don't take the easy way out because you might actually be worse.
yeah, the grass is always green and all that. And the thing is that he and on his journey of you could say sacrificing himself, he made life better for them patients, the 9 men in there. He helped the chief escape his mind when he comes up to him and he says to him at the end, he says, because he says earlier on, he says, me and you, chief, will get out of here. And the Indian says, I'm too small. And he says, what are you talking about? You're about the size of a tree trunk. And later on, he says that to him. He says, I feel big now. I feel I can do it. So, he's built these men up. And, that's the whole thing. The whole thing is that I'm going to go back to the bathroom scene because that is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. It is so hilarious. So they're in the shower room and Nicholson's moping because they won't vote on watching the World Series, and they're playing their stupid games. I love how they're playing Monopoly, and as usual, Danny DeVito's character, he's always cheating. He's trying to cheat in the card game. Now he's trying to cheat Monopoly, and he's always getting caught. And Harding saying to him, "You can't put a hotel there. You need it's $1,000 for a hotel and four houses." And then the next thing was Christopher Lloyd starts waiting him up, poking him, play the game. Play the game. Play the game. And he keeps saying, you do that one more time. Play the game. Just one more time, I'm telling you. Play the game. Do it one more time. It just keeps going on and going on. And then Nicholson hits him with the hose. And they're all laughing. But he says to him, why don't you all stay wet? He says, I'm going to go down the road to a bar. I'm going to have a few drinks. Who wants to come with me? And Billy Bobbitt says, you can't get out of here. And he's like, who can't? He says, I'm just going to lift that thing there and I'm going to throw it out the window. And they're like, I love how Christopher Lloyd's like, I love his facial expressions in this movie too and all. He's always,
I know.
And he's kind of,
I think that's what gets him cast a lot. He's always been great with those facial expressions. That's every time they cut to him, he's doing something like that.
Yeah, he's brilliant, isn't he? He's so funny in this. He's so good. But I love how he just says to him, "You gonna lift that thing?" And he's like, and Nicholson's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
But the next thing is he says, but Seafeld says to him something along the lines of, no, I think Seafeld says, how are you going to get through? And he says, I'm going to use your thick skull and smash a hole through the wall. And he says, my head would crush like an eggplant. And, and he says, no, I'm going to lift that thing and throw it out the window. And he says, who wants to bet? And I think Christopher Lloyd says, I bet $25.
Yeah, that's right. I'll bet $1.
And Nicholson's like $25. But the way he grabs that thing, you know what I mean? And Babbitt says, "Hey, Mac, you can't lift that thing, and he can't shift it." And he says, "Out of my way, son! You're using my oxygen." Know what I mean? But he tries to grab it, and he's like, you hear him like going, "Come on!" But he tries to lift it, and he can't. And then they say to him, "You give up?" And he's like, "Just warming up, just warming up." But you see you hear him grabbing it again, but you see the look on Nicholson's face as he's trying with all his might to lift that this, I don't know what it is. It's like a sink. It's made of pure marble.
It's like a water fountain, actually. Like, I guess for them, like they're all able to go in there and drink from it. I never even knew that like things like that existed, and the water's just going the entire time until somebody drinks from it.
Yeah, well, we had them in our school, only not as big as that, John. We used to have them in our school. They were like metallic, and they were in the corridors, and all you would do is press a wee button, and the water would come down, and you could suck the water out of it.
Yeah, we have those in our schools too. Actually, my old jobs even had those. Always had those water fountains, but never one where it was like a community one where like had like a bunch of different ones in one spot. The most I ever saw was like two next to each other, like an adult and a child could use it.
Yeah, exactly. But I know what you're saying. Yeah, one like that with all the different facets and stuff on it and everything. But just his face and how red his face goes, his teeth clenched together, and he's trying to lift this thing up. And that's so funny. I actually remember seeing a physical media release of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which had that on the front cover.
And I love that he has the balls after it's all done. Like he made no progress, and he's like, "At least I try."
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's even before that, John. See what he's like trying with all his might, and he can't lift it, and he's running out of steam and oxygen himself. He's like, and then right at the end, he just gives it one last jerk, as if, and it's still not one last jerk. It's just that it's not moving. No, and you're right. He kicks it, and he says, "Well, at least I tried," and that kind of changes their thinking into the next day of, yeah, that you know, feel bad about McMurphy. Let's vote to get the World Series on, you know. So the whole idea that the chief then is big enough and strong enough to lift this thing and throw it out the window and escape, right? For the rest of the patients to then wake up and see this, you see, he says to Nicholson, "You're coming with me," which confuses me because he runs out the window and McMurphy's still there, but McMurphy's dead. But they don't know he's been lobotomized. So I'm kind of thinking, like, I remember reading something about the ending of this, and somebody had said that the orderlies would, if a patient died during the night, the orderlies always check the patients, and they would remove the body before the rest of the patients would wake up, so it wouldn't disturb them, right? So there's that train of thought, or it's just added it down that we don't see the Indian take him with him, but you see him run over the mountains, escaping free. But the point is that this was McMurphy's idea. They don't know the Indian threw it through the window. So if they wake up that day and they're told that McMurphy's gone, so is the Indian, McMurphy must have lifted that thing and threw it at the window exactly how he said. So that, again, gives them all a boost and a lift. And I like to think that a lot of these guys, after we talk about what happens after the movie ends, that a lot of these guys had the guts to get out of that place. We know that a lot of them weren't committed. They signed themselves in and go off and continue their lives and make lives for themselves.
That's a great way of looking at it. I never actually thought of it that way. I thought that, like, you know, they would do what you said, like they'll probably remove him. The patients would figure out that he was lobotomized anyway because of the haircut if he was still in there dead when they realized. And, you know, maybe they just thought of it, okay, well, he couldn't do it, but at least the chief got away. And it's, you know, giving us hope that, like, okay, maybe not, he didn't get away, but look, the chief did. The chief was able to get out of here and escape, and like they had to know they were like buddies, like right, but obviously they hid the fact that he could talk, but she was always trying with him. He was always like trying to play basketball with him, and I
Yeah.
guess they would reveal like, oh, telling more in the way you're saying, like that is probably more logical because nobody even knew the chief could talk, and now all of a sudden he's able to throw a water fountain through the window.
But you look at as well what you're saying about the basketball scene too. Basically, like at the very near the start of the movie, was like when he sees the Indian and he says, "God damn, you must be what's height are you and stuff," and he's doing the
football.
yeah. But the thing is that even the orderlies are saying, "What the hell are you doing, McMurphy?" Talking to him, he's a deaf and dumb Indian, and he's like, "Well, it won't hurt him, will it?" You know what I mean? But the thing is that you see her looking out the window, even though the Indian, supposedly deaf and dumb, he's not even there a day, and he's getting through to him. He's doing something that she hasn't been able to do probably for years. He's getting through to him, and then that evolves into the basketball, then the juicy fruit scene, then the progression of let's get out of here. I can't at this moment, and then I want to go. You know what I mean? So that's what he was able to do. It's something that she couldn't do, and I think that is also something else which really bugged her, that this guy came in here and was able to, inspire these guys.
You could argue
more.
that, like, he cured one patient while he was there completely. Like Chief was nothing when he got there, and then by the end, he's a free man now, living the life he could live that he was never big enough to get there without Jack. So at least one person was able to go on with their life and do the thing that cured one mental illness when the rest of them couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. But I like to believe that he helped every single one of them eventually. That was it's just the start of a process. The only other thing that I wanted to bring up as well about the movie. Listen, we've been on like an hour and 15 minutes, and basically I didn't realize there was so much to talk about this movie until we started getting into it, because you go scene by scene and talk about certain things. The only thing that about this movie that kind of doesn't bother me, but I feel like it doesn't really need it, but it has a good payoff, is the scene where they go out on the boat.
Yes, I like that. That scene actually always stuck out to me as like feeling a little bit out of place, but it also doesn't hinder the movie, and it also gives us moments to bond with the patients and get a little bit more of seeing Jack in his personal life, or R.P. McMurphy in his personal life.
Yeah, that's very true, and it kind of introduces us to Candy, and it shows you about how Brad Dourif's character Billy kind of takes a liking to her. It also shows as well how much of a pervert Danny DeVito's character is, because at the start of the movie he's looking at the dirty cards, and then when Jack goes into the cabin with Candy, he's the first one to get up and try and look in the window.
Danny DeVito made a career out of that character.
Yeah, so he did. He did. That was the start for him. And but the payoff is when they catch that big massive fish, and I love because it's like sticking the two fingers up to the doctor, because at the start of he's so proud of this big fish he caught, yet they, I think, catch a couple of them and they're almost bigger maybe, and you just see his face when he's standing at the edge of the dock, he's raging. And the only thing is that because I didn't realize this till I actually watched the making of, that apparently the director didn't want that scene in the movie either, because he felt as if that they should just stay within the institution. And the payoff is that when the chief gets out at the end, that's the big payoff. So leaving the institution, he felt as if that kind of cheapened the end. And the producer kind of talked him into just filming it anyway, because the director says, we'll film it, and if it doesn't work, we'll take it out. And the producer says, well, listen, he says, that's the same with any scene. If it doesn't work, we take it out. So he decided to keep it in, and I think it's one of the only scenes I feel dates the movie.
It very much does. It always felt out of place to me, but like you said, it does have that payoff with the fish, which is funny. But it does serve somewhat of a purpose. But if you're right, if what you said is true, like I didn't really even realize it's a 4.5 hour original cut, which makes sense. Movies start out long, you got to cut somewhere. It's weird. Like they probably could have had better character moments in the institution and cut that scene out completely instead, because I feel the same way. It would have been better to have them stay inside the whole time and then have the chief escape at the very end. And that's the only time we're outside the movie.
Yep.
We go inside when he's going in, RP at the very beginning, he's going inside. And then we don't leave until the very end when the chief leaves.
Yep, exactly. And it makes perfect sense. And it almost feels as if that will be the way the stage play would be as well. And I don't think it takes anything away from the movie, but I can understand if they just stayed in. I understand exactly what they mean. And there was 15 minutes of deleted scenes, which I watched on the old DVD I have. So that's 2.5 hours. It brings it up to, and some of them deleted scenes look more like work print type stuff. Look, some of them don't look as if they were even in the movie. It showed more of the torture and stuff of what the orderlies were doing to the patients and things like that more at the start of the movie. And I suppose I don't know whether or not they were deleted because they felt it was too much, or they felt they just didn't need it because they were already showing a lot of that already. But yeah, when I hear, like I said in our Temple episode, when I hear about alternative cuts or original cuts or extra footage, I always am interested to find out what that is.
I always prefer if I could see the whole cut together, like how Apocalypse Now has 3 cuts or Blade Runner has like 6 cuts. I prefer to see that than actually watching the deleted scenes, because the deleted scenes leave me now to do the interpreting of what somebody else was imagining, and I just assume that the scenes are cut for a reason. So I never get really excited to go back to deleted scenes, but I do love watching different cuts of films, so it's kind of weird.
Well, there's a deleted scene, John, as well, where Nicholson goes down for his breakfast on his first morning, and he's just wearing a towel on his leather jacket. And Nurse Ratched comes down and says, why have you got no clothes?" And he says, "They didn't give me any of the clothing." And she says to the orderly, she says, "Make sure you get Mr. McMurphy his clothes. He shouldn't be running about here in a towel." And he says, "I agree," and he whips the towel off. but then it shows you he's actually wearing the shorts that he was wearing. I don't know if that's his underwear. When he was playing the basketball, remember he's wearing them on the outside of his jeans.
Yeah,
that's what he's wearing. And she says, "Look, make sure you go and get your clothes on." And then he stands behind her and goes like that. So there was this kind of this. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel as if there's a bit of sexual tension between them two.
They probably have that built in a little bit, and like maybe that's some of the stuff they cut out. It's like, we don't need to have that tension, but like you could always have it lying underneath the surface, like for us to interpret.
Yeah, because like it's like the other deleted scene about when I was saying about him talking about the likes of I said earlier about him saying about you think she's helping you. They said about, well, if you don't do what you're told, electroshock therapy and a lobotomy, and they cut that out. And I feel as if it's like what you explained another podcast, John, about there's too much exposition there. Just let us find it out as the movie goes on. And the funny thing is that when the final night when she leaves, where she thinks that she's got him under her control, right? And you see him kind of turn like that and give her the thumbs up like that when she's leaving, and she just expecting smiles at him. I always feel as if there's something there.
She probably thinks that, well, he's a ladies' man as it is, so he probably thinks that like all she probably needs to do is get laid to get that bug out her ass or something like that. It reminds me of something that he said in other movies. He says that he says that
maybe so.
So, but I think we covered pretty much everything we needed to cover on this movie. Like you said, like once you get talking about a movie like this, it you start to unlock a little bit. And I think that's one thing about a great movie like this, and why it swept the Oscars, is because it's so much open to interpretation as far as how you feel about these characters. It's just very well written, very well performed, and there's so much to discuss in a movie like this.
Yeah, I really feel like, John, we've only touched the surface on this film, because there's so much more that we could go into about the filmmaking process and how they got to where they got to, and I feel like we've just touched scratched the surface of it, and then of course the layers to it and the acting and of course the success that it had off the back of it too. For many years, I thought to myself, this movie deserved it. But in recent times, I've thought, no, I think Jaws should have won Best Picture.
Yeah, like this isn't like a huge upset, but I can understand. It's tough actually, because Cuckoo's Nest does still get brought up. It's not like Annie Hall versus Star Wars kind of situation. Like no one talks about Annie Hall anymore, but everyone talks about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Jaws is one of the most iconic films ever, but it's not like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest isn't one of those movies that at least gets brought up a lot.
Yeah, and look, we've touched on it before. This about the Oscars and and how unjust it can be. And obviously, me being a Jaws fan, I feel as if I think Nicholson, as I said at the start of the pod, deserved Best Actor, not because of previous performances for this performance. Doesn't mean he shouldn't have won before. He made have, should have, maybe made have, or could have, or should have won for other films before this. He deserved it for this, but it would have been nice to have seen the likes of maybe Roy Scheider get a nomination for Jaws for Best Actor. I think Robert Shaw should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I think Spielberg should have been nominated for Best Director. He didn't get nominated. If he had a lost to Milos Forman, fair enough, but he didn't even get nominated. So there's stuff like that. I just feel was overlooked. And but listen, it is what it is.
It is, and I mean the '70s are just full of like. I think Pacino was nominated for Dog Day Afternoon, but Al Pacino didn't win in the 1970s and early 1980s, despite playing Michael Corleone in 2 movies, playing in Dog Day Afternoon, playing in Scarface. The guy doesn't win until he starts woo-hawing in Scent of a Woman, so you can't take the fucking Oscars that seriously when they do things like that.
No, and there was an interesting clip when Milos Forman actually won his Best Director Oscar. He was being interviewed by the media, and he had his 2 sons with him, his twin sons, and they said, has your children seen your movie? And he said, I did ask them, would they like to watch it? And they says, no, they'd prefer to watch Jaws.
So even they knew.
They knew. I thought it was so funny. He was laughing himself like.
Okay, yeah. So I was gonna ask you before we got out of here. Do you like one of Milos Forman's other classic films, Amadeus?
Do you know? I haven't seen it.
No, really. I feel like that's a movie I kind of
haven't seen it.
Loved.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I like the song.
Oh, the song is great. Rock Me Amadeus.
Amadeus, Amadeus, Amadeus.
oh, Amadeus.
There's actually the football team I support. There's a goalkeeper called what's his name? Vladideus or something. They call him. He's like the 3rd choice goalkeeper, and every time they say his name, I'm like Vladimius.
Oh, that's hysterical. David, would you like to tell the good people what we'll be reviewing next time here on the show?
Well, next on the show, this time it's War and Aliens.
Oh, man, this is going to be great. Oh, my God, I'm in such a mood to watch Aliens 2. This worked out perfect.
Yeah, it's a good movie to watch this time of year, I think.
Yeah, it does feel like winter. It does feel like, I mean, that planet does look cold, and it's cold outside.
Cold, dark, rainy, miserable. Yeah, it's a good movie to watch.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me and David on this episode of the Let's Talk Movie podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be seeing you guys around. I'm just popping in at the end of this video for this week's digital code giveaway. In every single video that we do on Friday, we ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer one in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video where I'll put your name on a magic wheel. I'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they'll have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And we just got talking about one of the 1970s best films. So I'm going to ask you guys, what is your favorite 1970s film? And what is your favorite Jack Nicholson performance? Leave those answers in the comment section below. And guys, while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo, and a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, you can find all that information in the description below. But guys, if you got no money to throw away, don't worry about it all. We just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.